In the last movie, we began the process of abstracting our attributes that we were using in our create and update methods so that we could reuse those methods inside other classes. But when we did that, we used getObjectVars, and that presents some problems. And in this movie, we'll look at what those problems are and find our way around them. As we've mentioned before, the problem with getObjectVars is that it returns an associative array with all attributes for the class. And that includes attributes that may not have corresponding database fields, and it also includes private and protected attributes because we're calling getObjectVars from inside the class. So it gives us all the object variables that it has access to, and that includes those private and protected ones. That's two good reasons why it's not going to work for us. There are some ways that you can use getObjectVars from outside the class to exclude the private and protected ones. And you can find out information about that by looking at the php.net website. But that's still not going to rule out the case when there might be attributes that we want in our class and we want to be able to use, but that don't have corresponding database fields. And because of that, really the easiest way to work around this problem is going to be to create another attribute that is going to keep a list of all the attributes that have database fields associated with them. So let's do that. Let's go up here to the top and we'll put another static variable in here, and I'm going to call it dbFields. So inside dbFields is an array, and that array is going to be a list of all of the fields that are database fields, and that will keep track of it and we'll have access to it then. So now what we want to do is come back and actually recode attributes to make use of that. So what we'll do is we'll go through each one of those and we'll ask the object to return its value and put it into an associative array. We know how to do this in PHP. So we have an empty array, then we go through those database fields, and for each one, if the property exists, then we're going to set up the associative array equal to whatever that value of the field is. Now notice here, I'm using this and I'm using the dynamic field. That's how we're able to do that. We're able to use a dynamic variable here. Don't let that throw you. And then in the end, we return that new array that we've put together of all those attributes as our attributes. Now, of course, the drawback to this approach is that you have to actually list those fields out one by one at the top of each of our classes. Now, if we had something that was really complex and we had a big object with lots and lots of attributes, that might become cumbersome. And in that case, you could write something that was more complex that might use something like SQL's show fields from the users table. So show fields from users would return a list. We could parse that and then build that array, dynamically. But for our purposes, because we're going to be working with fairly simple tables, every time we create one of those database tables, we're going to go ahead and list off in the class what the database fields are. And that's going to be a nice, easy way for us to handle this problem, and it'll circumvent those problems that we have with getObjectVars. So once we save that, we now have a user class that is capable of all of the CRUD. We can create records, we can read them. We did that with our find all, find by ID, find by SQL, and we can instantiate them. That's part of the reading and turning them into objects. And we also now know how to update and delete them. So we now have a complete, well-rounded ability to interact with our database by using our user class. Now that we've finished abstracting out the create and update methods so that they're going to be reusable inside other classes, we're ready to move to one of those other classes, and that's the photograph class. And that's what we'll work on in the next chapter.